From the persistent gender gap to the issue of abortion to the historic nature of Kamala Harris's campaign, there's a reason this race has been called the boys versus girls election. And now, in a wide-ranging interview with NBC's Hallie Jackson, Kamala Harris explains why she believes America is ready for its first female president of color.
Do you think the country is ready now for a woman and a woman of color to be president?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I am seeing that in terms of every walk of life of our country. You know, I think part of what is important in this election is really not only turning the page, but closing the page and the chapter on an era that suggests that Americans are divided.
You've been reluctant to lean into, to talk about the historic nature of your candidacy on the campaign trail. Why is that?
Well, I'm clearly a woman. I don't need to point that out to anyone. The point that most people really care about is, can you do the job? And do you have a plan to actually focus on them?
NBC's Hallie Jackson joins us now, along with MSNBC political analyst Juanita Tolliver. I watched the interview several times, Hallie. Bravo, my friend.
Oh, thanks, Chris.
Among the things you asked the vice president was if she thought sexism would play a role in the election. What did she tell you?
Well, the reason I brought that up, too, Chris, and you heard her answer there when it came to sort of her comments from back in 2019 when she did talk about the so-called elephant in the room. She has a very different perspective. She made clear now, 4 years later, as she is conducting this run for president at the top of the ticket. But some of her allies, including, for example, former President Obama, as he's been on the campaign trail for her, have implied that sexism may be at play for part, at least, of this gender gap that we're seeing in this race. And I asked about that. Let me play it. Do you not see sexism as a factor in this race at all?
I don't think of it that way. My challenge is the challenge of making sure I can talk with and listen to as many voters as possible and earn their vote. And I will never assume that anyone in our country should elect a leader based on their gender or their race.
I spent some time with the vice president's team on the campaign trail in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania on Monday as she was traveling around with former Republican Congresswoman Liz Cheney. And the audience was clear. They wanted to reach not just women, but undecided voters overall, and specifically disaffected Republicans, voters who may be turned off by former President Trump, but who are not quite ready to cross that bridge yet and vote for Vice President Harris. That's who she's trying to reach. It's a small slice of persuadable voters, but the campaign feels that that could be decisive in what you know, Chris, is a very close race.
As close as it can be. Yeah. So, Juanita, what she said about sexism, and it was a carefully crafted political answer after the criticism that Obama faced for allegedly waving his finger at black men this campaign season. But do you think she doesn't think, as some women voters, maybe more than a few women voters have told reporters, that they believe absolutely sexism is a part of this campaign and part of her challenge?
Look, Chris, I think the vice president is deeply aware of the role of sexism and racism and prejudice in this country, given her current career trajectory as the first Black and South Asian and woman to hold many of the positions she has held. So I don't think that's what she was getting at, though. I think what she was getting at is challenging voters to reevaluate their understanding of leadership. And when she said that, I don't believe that anyone would vote for a person based on gender or race, I think that what she was appealing to was their logical, intelligent ability to determine that she's the best person for this race based on substance versus arguments of representation. And it honestly harkens back to Shirley Chisholm's presidential announcement back in 1972 when she declared, I am a woman and I'm proud, but I am not the woman candidate. I am Black and I am proud, but I am not exclusively the candidate for Black people. I think that's what the vice president was getting at, directly challenging anyone who doesn't look like her, men, people who are not individuals of color, to redefine what they consider to be a leader based on the substance, based on the strength of her character. And in doing so, she also drew yet another contrast with Donald Trump.
The New York Times writes, Juanita, that the matter of Ms. Harris's gender and her potential to make history as the country's first female president is defining the campaign, creating a contest that is, in ways overt and subtle, a referendum on the role of women in American life. I mean, we saw what childish childless cat ladies, over masculinity in the Trump campaign. You know, let's take our shirt off in the middle of the RNC. Abortion, obviously.
Right.
Why not lean into her historic candidacy as part of, you know, the explanation of why things are different? And I think in a very real way, the contrast she wants to make with the other side.
Well, I think she does emphasize it, especially when she's talking about the differences in how she will lead compared to Joe Biden. And think back to her speech on the DNC stage when she accepted the nomination for the Democratic Party back in August. She did talk about being the daughter of immigrants. She did talking about being Black and South Asian and her role as a woman. I do think that it's something that, let's be real, Chris, every time I appear on your show, it's the first thing people see. So when she said, of course I'm a woman, I don't need to explain that. They also see her skin tone. They see her posture. They see the way she modulates her tone and engagement. What she wants to do is make sure voters understand that this is a campaign of substance. And by highlighting her policies, by highlighting how she will lead, by highlighting her character, that's the way she wants to draw this contrast. And I respect it, honestly. And I don't think it's going to cost her anything with Black women or South Asian individuals, because her connection to these communities is long-standing. Remember, this is a woman who attended Howard University, proudly an HBCU. She pledged a historically Black sorority. And also, when she ascended to the top of the ticket, it was Black women who held one of those first organizing calls for her. Vice President Harris knows who her base is. She knows what her identity is. What she doesn't want is her identity to be any reason why any voter in this country would decide to not select her. And that's why she's leaning on the substance.